Hello and welcome to episode 131 of Authors Afterword. On this podcast, I talk to an author about one, occasionally more, of their books in detail, and if you find yourself enjoying today's episode, do share it with your friends. So, I'm Charlie Place, and joining me today is Nikki May, firstly of Wahala, and last year of This Motherless Land, which is the book we'll be talking about today. A reimagining of Mansfield Park. In This Motherless Land, we meet Funke, who is living a very happy childhood in Lagos with her family. We see a fair amount of this life, and it really is a lovely one, but sadly, one day on the drive to school, Funke's mother and brother are killed. Her father can't cope, his own mother is not a good grandparent, and Funke ends up being forced to go to England and live with her mother's white family. Spoiler alert, it's not a great option either, particularly given the vast difference between her mother's kind and caring nature and her aunt's wretchedness. But as Funke comes to find her grandparents are not bad, and moreover, her cousin Liv is wonderful. But that's far from the end of the story, and through two narratives we follow Funke, known in England as Kate, and Liv's lives as they grow up in a life surrounded by privilege and its effects, as well as the impact of their upbringings. As Nikki May herself has said, it's about identity, belonging, culture, and the meaning of home. Hi Nikki.
Hi Charlie, thanks for having me.
You are very welcome. It's great to have you on. I want to start with Mansfield Park, because I understand this is an inspiration, but obviously it's a reimagining. So can you tell us about this, the first kernel of this inspiration?
So I've always loved Jane Austen. I adore her writing. I think she's great on human nature. I think she's funny. I think she's smart. I think the fact that we're reading her books 200 plus years on is just proof of her genius. And I was struggling to find an idea for that difficult second book. There's a lot of pressure with your second book. It's people want it to be similar to book one, but I didn't. And I was rereading Mansfield Park for the umpteenth time. And the whole idea of a girl being snatched away from everything she knows and loves and dumped into this alien environment where she has to prove herself. Well, I thought it was pretty genius, so I stole it. And that was kind of my jumping off point for This Motherless Land. I tend to write what I know. And when I first came to England as a young girl, I remember being completely freaked out by how different it was from the famous 5 books I'd been reading, but also being looked down on for the first time in my life. So I thought this was a really good way of changing it up. So Mansfield Park was, if you like, a jumping off point and an inspiration. And in all the writing of This Motherless Land, I didn't go back and read it because what I didn't want to do was feel constrained by the plot, or even worse, to try and be Jane, because nobody can, certainly not me. But it was like a jumping off point, and there are bits, there are nods, there are Easter eggs in the book. I had to put Funke in an attic because obviously Fanny was in an attic. I had to mention the Bertram name because why not? So it was a playful reimagining. I also thought it was really good fun to have Black people on the page, because Mansfield Park, their whole wealth is built on slavery. And whilst I think the word slave is mentioned once in passing, but I thought it'd be quite fun to have Black people in my reimagining and actually take them back to colonial Africa. So it's a kind of decolonial reimagining, if you like.
What's your favourite Jane Austen novel out of interest?
It's really difficult because I think Emma is a brilliant book and very, very clever. And I think it's really difficult with Austen to sort of keep the book separate from the TV adaptations. So I watch Pride and Prejudice with Colin Firth and Jennifer L.A. at least once a year. I can sing it. I can narrate great chunks of the dialogue to you. And then when I read it, I realise they're actually quite different because her books are a lot less romantic than the TV adaptations and a lot spikier, really. So I don't know. I think Emma's a brilliant book. I think Pride and Prejudice is brilliant. I think Mansfield Park is really underrated. I think it's one of her biggest books. But she wrote 5 pretty perfect books, to be fair.
Can you see yourself writing or being inspired by another Austen novel in the future?
I don't think so, only because the pressure of it was huge. Because as I say, it was a jumping off point. I just took that jumping off bit and then thought I'd throw a few fun bits in. And now I've met so many Austen aficionados and I feel like a bit of a fraud because I love Jane, but there are people who dress up in Jane outfits. There are people who literally worship at the temple of Jane. And I've now met some of them. And I somehow feel, gosh, maybe I should have done a bit more Jane research before I started. So I think I've done my Jane. I will love her through her books. But I don't think I'd ever reimagine. But never say never. Who knows?
I can see what you mean, but I mean, there's definitely room for all sorts of reimaginings and retellings, isn't there? I mean, I'm not a fan of Mansfield Park myself, but your book, yes, thank you. Brilliant. I really, really enjoyed it. So getting back to the story itself then, your story has a lot to do with your life. Can you kind of expand on that for us?
So, well, it could be that I just don't have a lot of imagination because I tend to put a lot of me into my books. It was the same with Wahala. There was a lot of me and a lot of my lived experience in that book. And in some ways, it was very much a love story to London, which I miss terribly because I now live in Dorset. And with this book, when we meet Funke, she's basically living my life. My dad was a doctor, and when I was young, he was a consultant in a teaching hospital in Lagos. And I set it around the same time as well, because I haven't lived in Nigeria now for, gosh, coming on to 40 years. So whilst I go back regularly and my dad's still there, I don't think I could write authoritatively about Nigeria today. So I deliberately set it in 1978 when I would have been about 12. And I put Funke in my house. And in some ways, it was this trip down memory lane. It was wonderful. I always think writing is better than therapy. And obviously, memory is fallible. We remember what we want to remember. So my sister reads it and says, but I don't think it was quite like that. The balcony was different. And it's like, well, it's fiction. I'm allowed to twist it a little bit. But she's living in my house. She has my chopper. Her little brother is like my little brother. He was terribly annoying, but I loved him dearly. Billy the parrot was my sister's parrot. We used to go to the beach, Tarkwa Bay, where Funke goes with her brother every Saturday and collect cuttlefish shells for Billy. My mum was not Mrs. Lizzie. My mum is Alison, and I'm pleased to say we did yoga this morning. She's alive and well. But she was a teacher in my school and students loved her. I'm 60 now, but when I go to Lagos, I still meet grown adults who say, your mum was my teacher. I loved her. She stood out because she was white in a very black country and she wore mini skirts a bit like Mrs. Lizzie does, and she cuddled kids while all the other teachers were rapping us across the knuckles. So she was very much the inspiration for Mrs. Lizzie. And the bit about when I was young, being mixed race, I stood out like a sore thumb in Lagos. I was never looked down at, but I did get this feeling of being an outsider, which I've had in both my homes. So these were all put into the book. And when Funke goes back to university, I went to medical school in Lagos. Unlike Funke, I didn't knuckle down and I didn't pass. I dropped out in year 3 and embarrassed my father completely. But it was the same experience of being in the boarding school, of having friends. So a lot of me went into it. I've always said, I don't think I could write anything that isn't very much based on my own experience. I'd love to write a dystopian book, but until vampires roam Dorset and I can actually see them and tell you what they're like, I don't think I'll be able to.
Oh, that'd be an amazing book. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Right. Campaign for vampires going to Dorset. Yeah. Maybe not. No, I mean, I found when I was reading your book, and I felt quite bad about it because obviously I've got to interview you and I was thinking, right, I've got to read this book. I've got to come up with questions. And I got to about halfway and I was like, I have not got enough questions. I'm so immersed in the story. And I was just thinking of how wonderfully it was written. And I think hearing that it was so inspired by your own life, I was like, that's it. That's why. Yeah, no, that was amazing. I would like to ask, actually, you've mentioned your brother and you dedicate the book to him. I think Deji. Can you tell us about him?
He was my kid brother. He was wonderful. My brother, he died 3 years ago now, so I can't talk too much about it. He was lovely. He was great fun. He was a really good swimmer. He was terribly naughty. And we used to gang up on my big sister, Victoria, which was evil when you look back on it, but kids are evil. When I look back now, I think we had such a wonderful childhood. Growing up in Lagos in the 70s was just blissful. We were middle class. We were relatively spoiled. We went to the club at weekends. We went swimming. My mum taught in our school. It was pretty blissful. We'd read Enid Blyton books and we'd actually think that England was a bit like how the famous five lived. Nigeria's so different. We didn't have jam, but we could imagine what a jam sandwich was. We couldn't imagine lashings of ginger beer because lashings to us meant the sort of thing your teacher did when you were naughty. But it was just great fun. And so, yeah, I dedicated it to him.
Well, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
It's going to sound like a weird jumping off point, but you said about the club. I did wonder if that part was a lived experience as well. Yeah.
Yes, it was. They're sort of like country clubs, I think. You don't have anything similar here, I don't think. I mean, I guess they're like golf clubs, but without the golf. So there's a swimming pool, there's Sunday lunch, and also you could be feral. Your parents would go and they'd be sitting there chatting to with other parents, sipping gin and tonics or Campari and soda on a Sunday afternoon. And we would just be feral. We'd be diving in and out of the pool, playing hide and seek. And it was a completely safe environment. So, your parents would happily abandon you for 5 hours. It was great fun. I don't think they have clubs the same way they used to when we were young. My mum was English and a lot of her friends were English. So it was like loads of mixed race people, loads of expats with Nigerian husbands, and a sort of almost community within a community. But it was our normal. It was how we grew up. It was wonderful. It was great fun. And I personally think my childhood was pretty blissful.
It certainly sounds that way from the book, certainly. I suppose this also comes in with planning. Am I right in what I've heard that Liv wasn't originally in this story? It was originally all about Funke.
Liv was in the story and she was Funke's cousin and she was always going to be the person who brought her out of herself. But it was supposed to be Funke's story about Funke growing, Funke surviving, Funke thriving. And I got pretty much to the end of the first draft. In the original draft, Funke was going to have a thing with JoJo, and that was going to be the big love story and the romance. And I did write it that way. I'm a real overwriter. I think I've written 300,000 words to get to the 90 that's in the book. But you read it out afterwards. I fell in love with Liv writing her. She was never supposed to be so central, but I literally fell in love with her. And I did so many horrible things to her. The thing with Clinton Bonner was pretty evil. And then letting her think that her cousin was dead was horrid. But having got to the end, I realized that it was a love story, but it wasn't a love story between Funke and Jojo. It was a platonic love story between Funke and Liv. So I had to go right back to the beginning, dial Jojo right back, give Liv a lot more agency, if you like, a lot more of a central part. And the story just worked for me after that. It became a story of two people. I also love mirrors in literature. I love reading about them. I love writing them. So I found it really fun to almost reflect these two women. One's black, one's white, one's privileged, one's prejudiced. One wants to break free and be herself. The other actually wants to conform and belong. And one has a terrible mother who's alive, and one has an absolutely wonderful mother who's dead, which is worse. And it became this thing about setting them up side by side to reflect each other and also to show that, there's always two ways of doing things and not one way is right and not one way is wrong. So, yeah, I tend to have to tell the story to myself a couple of times before I work out how to tell it to anyone else.
I found Margot really difficult. There were times where I had to put the book down for a moment, my goodness, yeah. So is it the case then that you've effectively got an alternative version of this book where the romance is more prominent and it's Funke's story far more than Liv's then? Have you got an entire other version?
I have. I've got a draft where Jojo goes to Nigeria to rescue Funke. It
Goodness.
doesn't work, but I did write it. I've got a version where Funke comes back to London after she's qualified as a doctor, and Liv and her bump into each other in Hyde Park. I literally have to write all these various versions until I work out which one works. And you can tell when you write it and it's not right. You can tell even as you're writing it, but sometimes you have to do it to work out which way to go.
Wow, okay. With Jojo, he wasn't a cousin, was he, as such? But then he was a kind of a cousin-y family friend, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah. I think you could always go back and do it again. When I do readings, I find myself editing as I'm reading them. So I could still rewrite this book another time. And I think I did make a slight mistake with Jojo because he was so central in an original draft, where, as I say, he was the love interest. He was the person who goes to rescue Funke. And then I decided that wasn't the way to go. I stripped him back and possibly stripped him back a bit too far, because I have had people say, but who is he? Where does he come from? And I do have this thing where I think I'm just better at writing women than men. And therefore, I think it was right that Jojo was less central, because my men in all my books are just kind of bit parts. They're there because you need a couple of men just to push the story along. But I'm never as into them as I am as to my women. I never care as deeply about them. So I never flesh them out quite as thoroughly. I did like Kunle and Kayode in Wahala. So it's not all men. I just very particular when it comes to fleshing out my male characters. And perhaps I should have done a bit more to explain where JoJo came from. In the end, I decided he was a godson of a grandfather, but I think it works, but I probably should have just made it clearer who he was.
I think, yeah, it's the kind of implication that he's, I suppose, pretty much everybody's got kind of the family friends that you call your cousins anyway. So I suppose in that context, yeah, it does work.
Yeah.
Ah, it's interesting because I did have an unasked question that I thought I won't ask you in the end because I've only got so much time. Obviously, you've only got so much time. And I was thinking of asking you, were the romances important? Because they did seem very much that, I mean, they're there and they have their purpose, but yeah, they're not the forefront by any means. Yeah.
No, I did feel it was important to give Liv something to be happy about. And Kunle is a great character. I really like Kunle. I'd quite like to meet him. So I felt that Liv had been through so much and was so unloved by her family that it was, well, by her mother, that it was important for her to meet someone. And in a way, Kunle was her way back to Funke. So he had a big role to play.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've changed your own name when you came from Nigeria to England. Did you draw from this for your writing of what happened to Funke and her changes?
Definitely. Definitely. So the difference is I changed my name myself. So I dropped out of medical school, I think I was 18 or 19. My name is Nikki, which is shortened to Nikki. So everybody called me Nikki growing up. My mum and dad still call me Nikki. My friends that I've known since I was a kid call me Nikki. And then I moved to London, and dropping out of medical school was a really big deal. I let everybody down. I let myself down. My dad was horrified. It was literally a question of, if you don't go back to medical school, you're on your own. And so I arrived in London with 200 quid, a bit like Liv ends up in London. You get a copy of Loot, which in those days was a magazine where you found flat shares. So I got a copy of Loot and found a flat share. I went to Office Angels and got temping jobs. So very much like Liv's experience. And I got a job, and it was at Nikki. And don't forget, I had a really complicated surname. My surname was Oyegunle. Every time you said your name, you had to spell your first name and your surname. And I decided to make life easier for me by changing my name to Nikki. So instead of Nike, it became Niki. It was one less thing to spell. In fact, I became Nikki O, because Oyegunle was just honestly impossible. But I did do it through choice. And I do think things have got so much better, because if I was coming to England today, I don't think I'd have had to do that. Nowadays, I mean, watching the Lionesses win the match, and we've got, players with names that they don't have to change their names, and the commentators actually get their names right. To me, it's a real sign of progress that what happened in 1978 would not happen now. But I changed my name quite happily. And in those days, I am a real conformist. And in those days, I used to straighten my hair. My hair is now curly and natural, but I used to do whatever I could to fit in, to belong, which I did give a lot of that to Funke. Because even things like, my mum's English, so of course I spoke English. And in fact, English is the defunct language in Nigeria. We have about 500 languages. So English is the one that everybody speaks, usually as well as their own language. So school is all English, and I spoke English. But you speak slightly differently to the way you speak here. And I remember coming here and modulating my accent so I'd fit in better. And even the pronunciation of things. So I always thought Penelope was pronounced Penelope, because I'd only ever read it. Yeah. And I remember meeting a Penelope and being horrified and embarrassed when I was told how badly I was saying the word, and things like, I thought banal was banal. And you get caught up on it and you get accused of being stupid. And it's not stupidity, it's a different language. We learn it differently. So these were all little things that I gave to Funke. So when she arrives in schools, she's assumed that because you're black, you must be stupid and you probably didn't have a good education. And she thinks she speaks wonderfully. And in Nigeria, she's accused of trying to sound like the Queen, whereas here she's accused of sounding African. So these were all just really good, fun snippets of memory to put into the book. And it was great fun writing. Writing is cheaper and better than therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you do have, I mean, you don't mention it at all. It's not something that the characters have in their mind or anything. But you do have these subtle changes where they're speaking Nigerian English and then they'll switch to, I suppose you could say, British English. And yeah, you've just done it that it just happens. And when you're reading it, you just get the context of, oh, who are they talking to? Yeah, yes. Which is an interesting thing.
I also refused to put a glossary in. A lot of people said there are lots of Nigerian words, and hopefully context tells you what they are. But also, we've all got Google. So when I was growing up reading English books, nobody had a glossary at the back saying ginger beer is this, and a jam sandwich is this, and hidden treasure is this. You just had to go with the flow and work it out.
Yeah, I think even if it's not, the reader isn't completely 100% certain on it, you get the general idea.
Exactly.
Yeah,
More than enough.
it is nice to have that rather than having a word and then the translation, because then it kind of makes it sound like someone's repeating themselves.
Exactly, and it's a clumsy way of reading.
Yeah. I want to look, I suppose, briefly at grief, just because there's so many topics here, particularly in the context of Funke's father and the way that he goes about it. Can you talk a bit about that?
So, grief is a complicated, terrible roller coaster, emotional, horrible thing. And as I say, I lost my brother and while I was writing this book, and I was amazed at what grief did to you. And, it's the first time I'd lost someone very close to me. And it wasn't just me, it was affecting my parents, because losing a child is a horrible, horrible thing. And I don't have kids myself, but I watched them absolutely fall apart with guilt, with everything else. And there are lots of bits of grief that shocked me. The anger surprised me. One of the worst things I found about grief was when you forget, just for a little while, you forget that the person's dead and you think, I must tell him this, or I must show him this, or you hear a piece of music and then you realize they're dead and it happens all over again. And it's almost like it just happened. So grief is hugely horrible. And losing a child, I think, is possibly one of the worst things that can happen to someone. And I think Funke's father literally went mad when he lost his wife, his beloved wife, and his son. It's also true that in Nigeria, and I think now, but certainly more in 1978, boys are definitely more prized than girls. A boy child is a better child. They carry on your name. They're just, a girl child, nothing wrong with a girl child, but a boy child is, much more important. So he loses his son, he loses his wife, and Funke escapes without a scratch. It's also totally true that in Yoruba, there's a tradition that parents are not allowed to bury their children. In fact, they're not allowed to know where they're buried. And this is because losing a child is such a taboo that the parent has to be protected from it. It sounds barbaric, it's just tradition. So obviously, that doesn't mean it happens to everybody. People who are slightly more westernized wouldn't do that. But put it all in. Also, he had an awful mother. Bab's mother was an evil witch in Margate territory. So add it all together. It's also fiction. I like a bit of drama in my drama, so pump it all up. And I do think what Babs did is conceivable, horrible, but conceivable. And I also love the way that Mrs. Lizzie's friends, they think they're rescuing Funke by getting her away from him. I did give Babs some redemption. I mean, he wasn't a great father to Funke when she was 9, but I think he did try and make up for it when she came back to England as a 18-year-old. So I do give him some redemption, because I think grief was a much better excuse for his behaviour than Margot, who literally had no excuse and was just an evil woman. Margot is very much based on Mrs. Norris from Mansfield Park. And Mrs. Norris, I think, is Jane Austen's only thoroughly evil character. Some people cannot be redeemed. And to me, Margot is irredeemable. So there was no point trying to give her a way out at the end. She's a bad woman. She always will be.
Ah, okay. Yeah, so that's where she ends. And that's where you consider the end of her development, character growth. Yeah.
For me, yes. A couple of readers have said she's a bit of a caricature. I disagree. Some people are just plain evil, and she was one of them.
I'm going to agree with you. Yeah. You saying about the Nigerian funeral practices, it's in context, so I'm going to say about it. Like, I know that, gosh, it was only like a month ago that I went to the house that Jane Austen was died in. And I know hearing about how her sister couldn't go to her funeral. That was the practice in England there.
Yeah.
Incidental, accidental, but it kind of really brought to the fore
that and it feels cruel when you look at it now, because Cassandra cared for Jane so much. I mean, Cassandra and Jane were a real love story. And Cassandra, I think, nursed her through her death. So to not be allowed to go to your funeral just, to me, feels evil. But tradition is tradition.
Yeah, no, it is. You said about Easter eggs earlier. I would like to ask you about that, I suppose, officially. And you've also got the references to the past chapters. There were a couple that I saw, particularly, though, the carnation milk. I think you've got that over 3 times, where you've got Funke's like, this, I think she says, through you, she thinks, oh, the milk in England is claggy. And then later on, she's talking about the carnation milk being claggy. And then I think Liv later on sees the carnation. I think it's when she's in Nigeria, she sees the carnation milk as claggy. I just thought this was brilliant. It's humour, but also just really great. Yeah, can you expand on this, I suppose?
Well, I do think, I think sometimes we look down on other cultures for totally the wrong reasons. And the fact is, what you're used to is what you're used to. I remember when I first came to England, the idea of eating a rare steak was horrific. I mean, in Nigeria, you cook your meat. Well, Nigeria is a different place now to how it was 30 years ago. So now we have amazing restaurants where you would get a rare steak, but generally meat would be cooked to the death. Not everybody has amazing refrigeration. We often have power cuts, so your fridge is going on and off. So the idea of eating rare meat would have been, what is wrong with you, you crazy person? And it took me a couple of years before I could actually sit at a table with someone eating a rare steak, and even longer before I was ordering mine medium rare. And now it's like, I'll go all the way rare. But I think you could easily look down on someone and think, oh, they're so undeveloped and they're so uncultured. But they're not, they're just different. So yes, in Nigeria, I drank Milo, which is like a sort of powdered hot chocolate, which you made with carnation milk from a tin. We did not have fresh milk. It just did not exist. And when I first came here and saw all these people drinking mugs of milk, ugh, what are you doing? So it was quite fun to do that to them. And it was also just a really lovely run through my past. Things like sherbet dib dabs. And I also think it's a really good way of setting a book, the same way I did with the films that I used in each of the parts, a way of letting the reader work out where they are. So, it's sort of, I know I'm in 1978 because we're talking about Greece. To me, it was helpful to ground. And I'm also food obsessed. If you've read Wahala, some critic said Wahala is pretty much the longest recipe they've ever seen for jollof rice. I think they were trying to be disparaging. I was like, yes, job done. So yes, I do tend to chuck a lot of food into my books. I think food helps you understand characters. Are they greedy? Do they love food? Or are they pious? It helps you understand them. It also helps set the place, helps set the time. So yes, food matters, lots of it.
I did like the sections as well where you've got the films. Although I haven't watched The Bodyguard yet. So.
Oh, you must. It's a classic.
Well, I would definitely now. No, yeah, definitely. That was fun. And just you had the different pop culture references with the music.
Yes.
I know that you had the initial title for this book was Brown Girl in the Ring, I think. So.
It was very much Funke's book, and that was going to be her song, yes.
It was fun. It was fun. Did you consider where Liv sees... I'm going to say Kate on TV because that's who she is to her. Did you consider having her believed and kind of change that story up at all?
Oh, God, no. I wanted her to go completely bonkers. Somebody told me, and this is horrible, what's the worst thing you can do to a character? Do it. And I take this literally. So for me, it was Liv, because she was almost getting better then. She was going to recover. Grandma had her back. And then she sees Kate and is told, you are a complete lunatic. You cannot see Kate. Kate is dead. And no, it never occurred to me that she would be believed. Never. And it also occurred to me that she would question herself. And also it was really good. The other thing about setting your book when I did is we don't have Google, we don't have the internet, we don't have replay. I can't just rewind that and stare at the picture and pause and say, was it Funke? So obviously this worked in my favour because now I'll just press pause. I'll just rewind and say, it is her, look, Grandma. But obviously you couldn't do that. So no, I loved writing that scene in Barcelona because I actually watched that race here from England. It's a real race. And I remember screaming with my girlfriends when the Nigerians came third, because I think it's the first medal a Nigerian woman has ever won. So writing that scene was just pure joy. I rewatched the race hundreds of times to try and get the cheers right and try and get the timeline right. So no, never occurred to me that Liv would be believed.
Yeah, no, you say about the replay thing. I was waiting for that. I was like, what's going on here? Why can't she just put, oh, yeah.
You couldn't. Unless you'd recorded it on what probably would have been an 8-track or something, which she hadn't, thank God.
With Funke and Liv, we have a nice ending, and I liked it. I did wonder if that was going to be your ending, because I think that's somewhat similar to Mansfield Park. This was before I knew that you'd used it as a jumping point. But where can you see their story in the future beyond the pages?
Oh, it's difficult. I did end it. Every single one of Jane's books ends in a wedding.
Yeah.
So I thought, end it with a wedding. And you're not supposed to take any notice of reviews, but Wahala ends in a really wow way. And people are like, she should have got her comeuppance. She should have tied it up with a bow. So I did think, okay, I'll tie this one up with a bow, which is actually not in my nature. But I just felt they'd been through so much that let's give them a little bit of happiness. So in my head, Funke and Liv are totally happy. Liv goes to Nigeria every 6 months. Funke comes to London every 6 months. Both have kids who play with each other and little Lola. So in my happy little head, they're living this amazing life and everything's wonderful and the ring has been transformed and it's no longer a crumbling pit. It's gorgeous. In fact, I want to move there. It's so lovely. People say, would you write Wahala 2 or This Motherless Land 2? And the answer is a resounding no. You spend so much time with these characters. Not that I'm bored with them, but it's like I really now want them out of my head. It's like,
Yeah.
you've done your work, go away. I want to love it. I'm trying to write book 3, so I want to have those people firmly in my head. But never say never again.
No, I was thinking when we've been talking earlier and thinking, yeah, this book doesn't need a sequel, but at the same time, I would love to know kind of the stories of more of the secondary characters.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I know what you mean because it's being adapted for TV, fingers
Yeah.
crossed. And I'm talking to the script writer all the time, and she's asking exactly these sorts of questions. Where do you see Kunle now? And what do you think happened to Dominic? And
Oh,
it's
wow.
kind yeah, it's kind of good fun, except no, I don't care. I want to write book 3.
So you'll say the producer, the scriptwriter cares. They might include this in the
Who
adaptation?
knows? Who knows? But I think TV is so different. It's such a different medium,
Yeah.
and you can't be in people's heads. My writing is often in their heads, it's internal. And obviously, you can't do that on TV, otherwise, you'd have speech bubbles coming out or subtitles. So I think you need the other characters to have more prominent roles so that you can use them to reflect what's going on. But it's a completely different discipline. I could not do it. So luckily, I've got really talented people on both my books writing the screenplays.
While we're on the subject, can you tell us more about the Wahala adaptation?
So the script is done. Therese Coco's written it. She did Rocks, which she was BAFTA nominated for. So script is done. BBC have greenlit it. I have no control of this, so I just tell that I try not to get too bogged down in it because I'm just basically on the sidelines like you, waiting to watch it. Hopefully, they'll start casting later this year. Hopefully, a director will be brought on board later this year, and the plan is to start shooting in spring next year. TV takes so long, and I'm always moaning about it. And then I have author friends who say, this isn't long. Mine took 5 years to get adapted and another 5 years to find a script writer. But I don't know. I just can't wait to watch it. And fingers crossed we will.
Yeah, no, I know that I first talked to Liz Fremantle about her film 9 years ago, and then
There
it was
you
out last
go.
year. So yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
so slow. And there's much more to it than you think. To me, it's like just go on, film it. But all the stars have to align and everything has to, got to find the right funding. You've got
Mm.
to find the right streamer. Now that the world is so global, you need, although the BBC are on board, we want it to be streamed in America, in Africa, so it's sort of all sorts of things that need to fall into place. The writer's strike didn't help. We lost 18 months because of the writer's strike. But I'm just thrilled. It's unbelievable that my debut is going to be made into a TV show and looks like This Motherless Land. I'm looking at the first episode script in a couple of weeks. So it's pinched me. Is this really true happening? I won't believe it till they're on air.
No, no, fair. It is an amazing thing to happen. You said, I'm going to take us back towards the start. You said about you wanted your second book to be different. People say things like this, and they write a book that's similar, or you'll get something that's very different. What for you is important about making the books different each time?
I can't write anything unless I'm absolutely obsessively passionate about it because writing a book takes forever. I'm a slow writer. So Wahala took me, I think, 4.5 years to write. This Motherless Land took me 3 years to write. I'm already a year into my third book. And as I said, I overwrite. So I write it and then I realize it's crap and I rip it up and I start it again. I have to be obsessed about the characters and I have to absolutely love and believe in my story. And the idea of writing the same story again straight after just doesn't appeal to me at all. Even things like having 3 women living in London in 2000, and because Wahala was very contemporary, it was set now in London. The idea of doing that again just felt like I'd be repeating repeating myself, and I just felt it wouldn't be different enough, and then they'd all mix together. And so to me, it's quite important to make a jump between books. And also, I didn't realize when I was writing This Motherless Land, setting it between 78 and 98 made it historical fiction.
Yeah.
That freaks me out because that makes me archaic. I'm therefore historic. So that was like, what? So in some ways, it's quite good. So my third book is going to be contemporary. And I do this thing where I write about what I know. So my third book is set in an ad agency because I worked in an ad agency for 30 years and it's an industry I know and love. So I think for me, I just have to be super passionate about the idea and it has to really excite me. And I think it would be hard for the same thing to excite me all over again straight away, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Have you got any ideas for like book 4 and things like that on
No,
this
I
subject?
can't even think beyond book 3. It's like, can I do it? So no, I do think ideas come at the right time when you need them. But no, I honestly cannot see beyond book 3. I cannot even see to the end of book 3.
You'll get there. You'll get there.
I will.
Are you able to tell us a little bit more about book 3, or is what you've told us already?
Yeah, I can try. So it's got 3 women again, very, very different. I turned 60 last April, and I think being 60 makes you slightly obsessed with ageism. I don't feel 60 in my head. I think I'll always eternally be about 35 in my head. So occasionally I walk past a mirror and it's like, oh my God, who is that? Also, you get free prescriptions when you're 60. I didn't know this. So I'm picking up a prescription at the chemist and they're like, you don't have to pay. It's like, I do. It's like, no, you're 60. It's like, shit, I'm officially old. So there's all that sort of stuff about ageism, and you tick a new box when you're in that sort of drop down box thing. And my pension is not far away. I get third, or I get a senior rail card. So it just is a real place you stumble into, especially when you don't really feel 60. And I think there's a lot of ageism. I think old women, well, there's so many words for us. We're old hags, we're harridans, we're crones, and we're not silver foxes. We're cougars. There's just so many horrible things said about older women, and we don't actually feel old. And then at the opposite end of the scale, I've got my goddaughter is 18, and I've got loads of friends who have young children in their 20s. And a lot of horrible things are said about younger women. They're snowflakes, they're lazy, they're oversensitive. Then 35 is another of those stumbling ages where, why haven't you got a kid? Why aren't you married? Why aren't you successful? So I just feel that for women, there's almost not a good age to be a woman. It's almost every age you are, you're doing something wrong. Whereas for men, I don't think you have that. A 35-year-old man who's not married, it's just having fun, it doesn't matter. A 60-year-old man is a silver fox. If he happens to be going out with a 20-year-old, it's like, whoa, get in there. He doesn't become a cougar. And 20-year-old boys, I think, are more closeted than 20-year-old women. Lazy boy job is not a thing. Lazy girl job is. So it's kind of given me a lot of ammunition to have a lot of fun with. I tend to need to have fun when I'm writing. I need to be able to be slightly spiky, slightly edgy. I also think women can be their own worst enemies. So I think it's women who bitch about older women and younger women and 35-year-old women. So I'm having loads of fun with 3 characters, one at each age. I've got 21-year-old Blue, I've got 59 going on 60 Candy, and I've got 30-something Tommy, all thinking they've got the short end of the straw. I've got a black woman, I've got a white woman, I've got a mixed race woman, I've got a working class woman, I've got a really posh woman. So it's all these things where women, instead of helping each other, are pulling each other down and sniping at each other, because it's so much easier to tear each other down than to fight the system. And I'm 35,000 words into my second draft. Some days I love it and think I'm going to win the Booker Prize. And next day I realize it's a complete pile of keck. Today is one of the complete pile of keck days. But this is all part of the process and having fun with it. I'm actually really enjoying writing at the minute, most days.
Well, I think it sounds good. So
Thank you.
Try and add that to your feeling that it's no good today and maybe change that. You said about mirroring and having these different, I'm going to use the word stereotype because I can't think of the right word right now, but that will get across to you what I'm meaning. It sounds like you're doing that in this book as well, where you've got the differences and
Always. I think I'll always have my women characters, and I think I will always write about strong women characters. I think they will always reflect each other. And I think I'm having fun doing that with these women, and also judging each other. Women can be terribly judgmental. And I think it's quite good fun to watch them judging each other and realizing that they're completely wrong and they don't actually know what they're talking about. I think also flawed women are so much more interesting than perfect women. So you can be absolutely sure that I've thrown every flaw in the book. at these three women.
I'm seeing a lot of immersion then, which is going to be, I think that's going to be, it sounds more like even more immersion than This Motherless Land, which is interesting. But yeah, I know that you've looked at Mad Men as well. You've been researching there.
Gosh,
I can see where
love
that's
Mad
coming
Men. So having an excuse to rewatch that is just wonderful. It's like, yes, let's go watch Mad Men again. And Peggy is such an amazing character in Mad Men. So yes, Mad Women, let's go.
I am going to take us for one more question on This Motherless Land. I've left it because I realise it's not officially an important question, but I wanted to ask, can you tell us more about Billy?
Oh, Billy. So Billy was my sister's parrot. He's an African grey, and they're quite elegant creatures, parrots. And African greys have that very red tail and the grey feathers. I think they're quite intelligent. I mean, this is the only parrot I've ever known. So Billy was my sister's parrot. She inherited him from a friend, and he lived in a very big cage on our balcony. And he was a vicious little parrot. I honestly still have got a scar from when he came and took a chunk out of my hand while I was trying to give him a peanut. And we used to love Billy, and he did talk. He said hello, and he did say a few things. And he was just fun. And he's just, you know how you have these memories at a first pet. And he then ended up on the cover of my UK edition, which is just lovely. So I look at it now and I see Billy, and my sister says it's my parrot. And I was like, I know it's your parrot, but look, he's famous. So it's really good fun. And now everybody buys me parrot things. So I keep getting cards of parrots and little parrots and parrot badges. So I've even got parrot earrings. So yes.
No, I didn't know that about Billy being on the cover. Obviously, I could see it was Parrot, but I didn't know it was
no, that is
particular
Billy.
one.
Well, it's not really Billy, but it is Billy to me.
Yeah, very nice. People cannot see this unless you see clips on social media, but you have a picture of your schnauzers. I think that's how you say it.
And it's Bella's birthday today. Fella is 11 today. Happy birthday, Fella.
Happy birthday, Bella. But you do what sounds like a combination of a dog walk and a plot walk. Can you tell us how this informs your writing and helps?
So the dog walk is my most important part of the day. I wake up and I just can't wait to go on my dog walk. And I generally do an hour and 10 minutes in the morning. And you can tell when I'm writing because I stop and I start sending myself a message or a voice note because something has suddenly clicked. That's what she does, or that's what happens to her. And the dogs are so used to it. They're like, sit there waiting for me to finish my voice note or my message. And sometimes my husband walks with me, and I don't say this, but I'm like, do you have to? Because it means I can't spend my whole time plotting. I have to actually talk to you occasionally. But I soon give up. After 10 minutes, he's 10 foot ahead of me, and I've stopped sending a message, and he knows he's like the dogs. He just stops and thinks, she'll be here soon, just keep going. So yeah, I find that there's something about walking. You're engaging part of your brain, but you've left quite a bit of it free to think. And I also think there's something about distances. When you're writing, you're sort of inches away from your computer screen. When you're walking, you're looking into a horizon. And I find that somehow frees up your brain a little bit to think in a slightly different way. Yeah. So yes, I would say most of my best ideas come on dog walks, and most of my plot twists come in dog walks. And now with modern technology, I can just send myself that message, which is better than when I'm in bed, because I also wake up with eureka moments. I write them down, and in the morning I cannot read my writing. I'm like, I know that was the most genius idea, but unfortunately I can't read it, so I don't know what it said, and I'm not allowed devices in bed, so I can't send myself voice notes. But yes, hurrah for the dogs. They always get mentioned in the acknowledgements.
Hey, you've got to be careful when you're going to sleep and having that blue light on you, haven't you?
Yeah, I can't do it. Got insomnia anyway. Definitely don't need a screen in bed.
Yes, yeah. Nikki, this has been lovely having you today, and it has been an absolute joy reading This Motherless Land. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks so much, and wish me luck for this award.
I will, absolutely. Yeah, I should say at the time of recording, Nikki is on the long list for the Nigerian Prize for Literature. I believe
that's the one. Fingers crossed.
I do hope you enjoyed this episode. Do join me next time. And if you have a moment to spare, please do leave a rating and/or review of this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Podcast Addict. Thank you. Authors Afterword, episode 131, was recorded on the 29th of July and published on the 27th of October, 2025. Music and production by Charlie Place.